I want to introduce Ruth Krebs, and Ruth is a telecommunications executive. I almost got that right. Yeah, great. And Ruth is traveling to 100 countries, and I think she's on about number 78 or something like that, and is just back from one of her trips. And let me introduce Ruth Krebs.
Mary was statuesque, with short blonde hair, porcelain skin, and ruby red lips that matched her perfect manicure. I was her opposite, a brunette then, with a practicality that couldn't compete. After all, she was regal and mysterious, the first classy woman I had ever met who could sit alone at a bar and be content. She emitted a sense of calm and wisdom I envied. She was my friend. One day she informed me that my self-imposed, homebound, single mother duties were over. It was time to break out. We were going dancing. I was nervous and scared, but she assured me it would be fun, and she would teach me her techniques. That first Saturday night at Rupert's nightclub, I wore the only sexy thing I owned, a black and silver dress I had bought once in Macy's in New York. She wore red as usual, standing even taller in her heels, bold in her gold jewelry. "Follow me and do as I do," she said. I held my head up, walking slowly behind her as we laced through the crowd. I watched the men watch her. She had a magnetism I couldn't imitate. She looked back at me. "We'll go to the bar first." She introduced me to William, the bartender, who tucked our purses behind the bar. We flirted with him while he poured drinks, and I learned we were staking our space for the evening. No one else would sit in our bar stools that night. "Now we'll go fix our lipstick," she said. I was all in, but first she told me her strategy. "We don't buy any more drinks tonight. The men we meet, or William, will take care of that. This journey will get it started. Come with me and watch carefully." She leaned forward, touching William's arm as he handed us our purses. Slowly turning her stool, she stood looking back at me. Her eyes told me to follow, and I did. I wished I could be as sophisticated as her. She never raised her voice. She didn't have to. People would lean in to hear every word. The place was packed, and I had to focus to stay within her reach. Before me was the most phenomenal walk to a restroom I had ever seen. She chose her path carefully, considering the tallest and most good-looking men in the club. As she glided through the crowd, the sea parted. Her hands gently grasped the men's backs and shoulders while she whispered, "Excuse me," in her seductive voice. The men were mesmerized as they clustered around her. I trailed behind, trying her touch approach, feeling like an amateur lapdog. She was so smooth. I was entranced. I wanted men to look at me the way they looked at her, but it seemed an unattainable goal. I felt invisible. Returning to the bar in the same manner, I saw William had replaced our drinks with new ones. "From your admirers, Mary." She smiled knowingly as she lightly touched his hand. "How do you do that, Mary?" I asked. She turned her head and laughed. Her eyes were bright as she looked at me. "You can too, Ruth. You can too." And I did. It became our Saturday night ritual. I bought sexy dresses. I learned to stand and talk and touch while walking through a crowd of men. I forgot for a little while I was responsible for a 3-year-old boy. We danced a lot. We met a lot of men. And we would smile at each other, sitting at the bar, our purses safely behind it, new drinks in front of us. And Mary would lean in. They get a package deal with us, you know, blonde and brunette. It would always make us laugh. It still does.